topics we will be delving deeper into is the obvious, the Kibra by-election. The residents of Kibra went to the poll this week to elect their representative for the next 2 years in the National Assembly. Imran Okoth, the ODM candidate, emerged victorious, but this didn't overshadow the fact that a lot of issues were actually highlighted in terms of the campaigns that we saw in Kibra. One of the most aggressive campaigns from all the 24 candidates, but mostly ODM side and Jubilee. But with the win of ODM in this by-election, what does this mean for the Jubilee Party and one of the leaders in Jubilee Party, Deputy President William Ruto, in terms of the guy who was touted as his key man, that is Jubilee's candidate, MacDonald Mariga. We'll definitely take a look at that, not forgetting what exactly happened in terms of the onslaught on the judiciary. Chief Justice David Maraga earlier this week highlighted very key issues in terms of what exactly the challenges that are facing the judiciary, in terms of the judiciary funds being slashed time and time again, which might be an impediment in terms of offering the functions that the judiciary also does. Will this be an impending disaster in terms of allocating justice? We'll take a look at this, or is it a revisit by the executive? All right, not forgetting, last but not least, we'll definitely take a look at the 9 trillion debt ceiling. Parliament, the National Assembly rather, actually passed this particular motion, the proposal to raise the debt ceiling from 6 trillion to 9 trillion Kenya shillings. What exactly does this mean for the country in terms of the tough economic times that are being felt and in terms of the high debt scale that Kenya actually has to deal with? Definitely a lot more coming your way, and we'll definitely anticipate your call, where we'll get to interact with our viewers just to get a feel of what exactly your take is on this particular topics that we'll be discussing right here in studio. So let's get right into it. The very first topic of the day centered on the Kibra by-election. ODM leader Raila Odinga finally managed to secure his bedroom in Kibra from the ruling Jubilee Party onslaught after ODM candidate Bernard Imran Okoth was declared winner. Now, Kibra constituency by-election witnessed one of the most aggressive political campaigns. The race suddenly shifted to become a rivalry contest between Deputy President Dr. William Ruto and Raila Odinga, where ethnic mobilization and the 2022 succession politics carried the day. And as our Patrick Amimo reports, political pundits are of the opinion that the March 9th, 2018 handshake between President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga opened up the ODM stronghold for other political parties to showcase their candidates and offer a glimpse of alternative future leadership.
ODM leader Raila Odinga mobilized ODM politicians and other allies to campaign for Imran Okoth. Indeed, Raila pleaded with his supporters to protect his bedroom from a Jubilee assault spearheaded by his greatest rival, Deputy President William Ruto, who had equally marshaled forces to wrestle the seat from ODM.
Ukiona mtu ameuliza usaidizi kwa bedroom, ujue mambo kimeumana.
Kuna ubaya gani nikileta watu kwa bedroom yangu? Kuna makosa?
Jubilee's Mariga conceded an early defeat after ODM's Imran opened a huge gap even before the IBC could announce the final tally. Jubilant ODM supporters and lawmakers confirmed Raila had secured his bedroom.
Siria bedroom ni ya mama na baba. Sasa yeye anajua siri.
The person who coined that never got to understand the implication, because that implies that the person at the gate, Ruto has already surpassed him. The compound Ruto walked through, he got into the sitting room, sat comfortably. So he's now getting into the bedroom. That is when people are panicking. That is somebody who's made tremendous progress. Are they acknowledging that when they say this is Raila's bedroom?
Divisions in NASA and Jubilee played out in Kibra campaigns. Issues affecting residents of Kibra took a backstage, while the Building Bridges initiative and 2022 politics carried the day. Amani National Congress Party candidate Eddie Dowalo emerged third overall.
I think Musalia is trying to carve a niche for himself. And it's a very expensive niche. He either decides to remain under the court of Baba or work with Ruto. And I think of those two alternatives, none is better. So this coming 2022, Mudavadi has to come out to the fore as his own man and create his own coalition.
The March 2018 peace deal between President Uhuru Kenyatta and opposition leader Raila Odinga encouraged 24 candidates to compete in the by-election.
If there was no handshake and Ken passed on and there was a by-election in Kibera and the tensions were as high as they used to be, would Jubilee have campaigned in Kibera? They wouldn't have. The tensions that would have been there in Kibera would have been so high that we'll be suffering violence today.
Despite that, cases of intimidation and violence were witnessed in some polling stations and might have scared potential voters.
If I am contesting against you, and I feel you have an edge over me, either by government support or money or any other thing, and I create a rumor, my supporters will take it upon themselves because they know the institutions that are charged by law to ensure freeness and fairness of an electoral process are not doing it. So my people take charge. That is where the existence of vigilantes come in. And those vigilantes, you cannot control them. Because what are they saying? They're saying we are protecting that which we consider ours by right. But again, there shouldn't be any space for voter bribery. There shouldn't be any space for the acts of thuggery that we saw.
It is interesting to note that the two political heavyweights, Raila Odinga and William Ruto, and their allies, despite attracting huge crowds in rallies, failed to mobilize residents to come out in large numbers to vote. Patrick Amimo, KTN News.
All right, that report by Patrick Amimo forms the basis of our first topic of conversation. That's the Kibra by-election. So we had a vote that was touted as our referendum vote, pitting not just the 24 candidates in the Kibra by-election, but some of the political heavyweights in the form of Deputy President William Ruto, who was pushing for the Jubilee candidate, and ODM leader Raila Odinga, of course, pushing for Imran Okoth, who emerged victorious. So we'll definitely delve deeper into not just the candidates, but the bigger picture itself. And joining me in studio to help delve deeper into this particular issues, none other than Kipchumba Karuri. Many thanks for making time, lawyer and political analyst. We also have Mark Bichachi in studio, who's a communication strategist. And last but not least, Dismas Mukua, thank you so much for making time, political risk analyst. Of course, we expect Rosalie Nobala later on during the show. But gentlemen, allow me to start as we are right now. Your immediate reactions to the Kibra by-election. Was this expected? Do you think so?
So, to the run-up of the by-election, there were a lot of things running up and down, but I wouldn't really call it an election. Because, why is that? You know, for an election, there are some symptoms or the characteristics of an election. It must be free and fair, it must be credible. But what happened in Kibra, it fails short of that. The violence and the issue of ethnic targeting, where some groups were targeted, some groups did not vote. And I'm speaking as a person who paid a visit to that area. And whereas the nation and the results and everything, we have moved on from that. But it is a very sickening kind of thing to look at. One, no arrests were made. We heard of allegations of voter bribery. We did not see anybody being arrested. We saw on live TV leaders being clobbered by goons. Nobody was arrested. So after all these overshadowed an election, which on its beginning, it was characterized by a lot of positives. You have to remember that this was the first election where we saw ODM and Jubilee shaking hands in the campaign trail. And also this was the first election where, for the first time since independence, Kibra was allowed to take part in the national election discourse and people could hold rallies in Kibra, which is a positive. But come on the election date, there were a lot of other things that if we are not going to learn from them, we might have a bleak future going to 2022. Those names of calling other people cockroaches, saying we are fumigating the bedroom, and all those things of trying to size out other people, ask yourself today, if we are in a contest, and let's say Central Kenya leaders call Central their bedroom, leaders from Nyanza call Nyanza their bedroom, those from Rift Valley go to Eldoret and say this is our bedroom, do you think we will have essence of politics? What will result will be anarchy. So going forward, what we must learn from that election. And then also there are positives we took from the elections. It is the first election where all the candidates who lost conceded defeat. Mariga conceded defeat before even the count was done. Sure. The same happened to Owalo. So those are the positives we need to carry from there. But we now need to come back and ask the perpetrators, both of the alleged voter bribery, the issues of violence, and the issue of using goons to make sure that some populations do not vote, is something that we need to ask ourselves. If it is not contained, we will not have a peaceful election in 2022.
Interesting. According to the dailies, Kibra CPD says no one registered an official complaint over the poll day violence, but we well know of the allegations that are being thrown around. Magbi Chachi, as I come to you.
But Jesse, maybe to disabuse the OCPD,
yes,
there is what we call, the essence why we have police in this country is not that all offenses are supposed to be reported to the police. While they were clobbering Didmas Baraza, the police were there. Do you need somebody to report? No. The police have a duty to arrest all offenders or anybody who breaks the law. It is not a must that you go and report to the police. Reporting, that is, they are trying to run away from their responsibility. And at times I ask myself, when we quote such an high-ranking member of the police, do they listen to themselves before talking? You are the person who is in charge of a place. Instead of going to arrest those people, you come back and ask the public, somebody come and complain. They can arrest Suomoto.
All right, interesting. Mark Bichachi, allow me to quote former Prime Minister first, Tony Blair. The first rule in politics is that there are no rules, at least in the sense of inevitable defeats and inevitable victories. What's your reaction in the Kibra by-election?
Well, first, I'm very happy that people who could vote for themselves did win. That's let me declare that. Not because I'm a supporter of ODM, but I'm a supporter of good leadership principles. And I honestly believe if anyone is running for MP, they should at least have experience as to how a voting booth looks like. If you don't have basic experience in any job, you will not be hired. So for that, I am glad. But of course, I am not happy that there was violence in that particular election. But my issue is that the narrative is being skewed a little bit. Because the people who were stoned are Didimas Baraza and Boni Halwale. And then it is equated to the fact that there are less votes because they were stoned. My question is, how many votes in Kibra does Boni Halwale have? And how many votes in Kibra does Didimas Baraza have? The truth is they have none. And number two, what official business had they there? And number three, we must ask the question that who really was repulsed out of Kibra? Was it vote bribers? Or is it just violence for the sake of violence? If you follow the story, especially of Didimas Baraza, it is intrinsically linked to some notes that were found. And if that is the case, then you must ask yourself, why weren't the vote bribers arrested first before the violence started? And this is really the game that we are playing to the public. We cannot say that let's condemn violence and then let's disenfranchise the public by allowing that people should be bribed. It is also not true to say that indeed Mariga would have won if his people would have been allowed to vote. Well, if our good friend Imran had 24,000 votes and the votes that Mariga had would have been more, then you tell me how is it that a smaller crowd chased away a bigger crowd? That does not stand to logic. It does not make sense at all that if there were goons keeping away people from voting, how come 11,000 of them were able to vote? And if they were more willing to vote, then how come that the few goons were able to overcome the majority? The game being played here is quite simple. The people of Kibra must be congratulated without fear or favor for the very mere fact that despite their economic condition, they decided to chase away vote bribers. That must be congratulated first and foremost. Secondly, they must be warned and told that violence should not be allowed, and the perpetrators of violence should be, action should be taken against them with the same fervor, with the same strength that action should be taken against those who are bribing votes. And that is the bigger crime. And let me tell you the truth. If you come to my house and you try to bribe my children, I'll most likely stone you too. So if that was the case, then the first apology needs to come with those who carried money to basically and sabotage the electoral process in this country and then claim that democracy is on trial.
Oh, interesting facts. Two wrongs don't make a right, definitely, Dismas Mokua. What's your take on that, including what the gentlemen have contributed?
Well, I think when we're looking at Kibera, we need to start from 2017. In 2017, there was widespread violence countrywide, and we were told there was voter bribery. But the people were complaining about the allegations of violence in Kibera. 2017, they were on top of Mount Kenya. They got some whiskey and pepper steak, and they were very quiet. They never complained. In my view, what we must learn from Kibera is that as a nation, all of us, we must condemn in the strongest terms possible any acts of violence, because we should allow the voter Mora, in this case, to go and exercise our democratic rights. That there was allegations of violence in Kibera shouldn't give people now the opportunity to say that this is a good thing or a bad thing. If you are condemning violence, you condemn the violence in Kisumu, you condemn violence in Kibera, in Kisii, countrywide. If there is something happening in Kibera and it serves your interest, at that stage, you shouldn't be jumping up and about and saying, okay, let me wait. This violence is going to serve my interest, so I'm happy. In other words, we shouldn't ignore violence. We shouldn't ignore voter bribery and intimidation. When the voter wakes up early in the morning, they must be given the opportunity to go and cast their ballot. You know, yesterday, there were some people in a political rally who condemned the violence in Kibera. The same people did not condemn the violence when Baby Pendo died, or when people were being beaten here in Eastlands. They decided to keep quiet.
Selective amnesia.
Yeah, selective, you know, what we were told about Edward Clay. So, as a nation, even if you want to borrow from the black movement in the US, an injustice in Kibera is as bad as in Murang'a or in Kisii. Then secondly, this was a very serious proxy war between three politicians. You had Raila Odinga, whose bedroom was being invaded, and he said that he's going to fumigate the bedroom. Then you had Dr. William Samoei Ruto, and you saw him on TV saying, kule bedroom kimeumana is calling for reinforcements. You know, really, reducing a serious election into a bedroom matter. Never mind, children are watching news, and these are our future leaders. So maybe we should also, as leaders, we must sanitize our language. And then on the other hand, then we had Salem Davadi and Owalo. But what emerges from this by-election is that the voters there behaved in a manner suggesting that either they were irrational or they were not serving their selfish interest. Because the people who got majority of the votes are the ones who are presiding over the economic management of Kenya. One of the candidates, through the proxy, said, if you elect me as an MP, I'm going to give you roads, I'm going to give you water, I'm going to give you everything. Yet, the candidate's sponsor is the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. So the question arises, why can't you do this thing now? Whom are we supposed to be holding responsible? Because for any developmental issues in Kenya, it's a Jubilee administration issue. Sure. When you talk about CDF is not used for all those projects. But I think making progress as Kenyans, we should now start voting with our selfish interest in mind. Like, for instance, the first time anybody saw Imran speaking is after he was declared the winner. And he spoke very well. He was very eloquent. People were surprised that where has he been all along during these campaigns? Because for Imran's campaign, who spoke? Raila Odinga, Anne Waiguru, Kivutha Kibwana, he never spoke. For Mariga, it was very exciting that something which is rare in the Kenyan political space, even before looking at the scoreboard, I think his people did the mathematics and told him, you're not going to make it. He considered and even said to Imran, let's have lunch and look at the issues, see how we can make progress. Now, that is what we are supposed to be encouraging in Kenya. And in as much as, Bichache for the longest time said, wait a minute, this gentleman has never voted, but you can see very good signs of leadership from him. Because, had he said that, wait a minute, my votes have been stolen, there's a chance that there would have been violence.
Yes.
So, in my view, these are the things we are supposed to pick. But when you look at Imran, I'm wondering whether he's going to be loyal to the voters in Kibera or whether he's going to be loyal to Raila Odinga. Because I suspect he doesn't know how he won this election. He doesn't know how how the T-shirts were printed. He doesn't even know the election budget. He was just told that we are about to announce the winner at 5 o'clock, go to the hall, and you're going to be declared winner. And in my view, I suspect in the next few days, people are going to be suffering from buyer's remorse, asking themselves, why did we place premium on somebody who has run an issues-based campaign? And the last point, it's one of the losers, a sole loser, is claiming that had there not been violence, I would have been won. Now, this loser is the same person who's been accusing another loser of failing to accept the verdict of the people. The deputy president for the longest time has told Raila Odinga that when you lose an election, accept defeat, concede. But this time round, it's the same person who's saying, wait a minute, there was a bit of violence. But when you talk about violence, did you see anybody being chased out of a polling station? I mean, we were watching live TV, unless also the media were compromised and they were part of the cartel and they were selective in their live coverage. Nobody was kicked out of a polling station. In fact, I can venture to say that from the time we attained independence, this has been the most peaceful by-election, or rather election you've had in Kibera, that the handshake allowed the deputy president to venture into the middle of Kibera, address people in a very peaceful manner. It allowed Musalia Mudavadi and Owalo to do that. And then, of course, it allowed Raila Odinga to open up his bedroom.
All right. Kipchumba, before we go to Mark Bichachi, DP Ruto has been quite vocal, at least on his Twitter page. Just one of the tweets. A loss felt like a win after making inroads. Beat a defeat, saving face, calculated tactics of a strategist. What do you make of the furor on Twitter?
I wouldn't want to say I know whatever informs that kind of reaction from him, but when you now open up Kibra and you dissect the results, of course, the main point in an election is that from when you're strategizing, you discuss the winner and you just bandy up the loser somewhere. But when now you dissect the results and you ask yourself, wait a minute, there are A, B, C, D that happened. There are things that when you look from a political point of view, there are gains and losses. There are people who won and there are people who took home something. So looking at it, there are inroads that were made. If you compare what happened in 2017 and what happened in the concluded by-election, yes, indeed, Jubilee made inroads. That's when you have to accept those rallies could not have been possible, right, in 2017. The same happens to Mudavadi. His candidate might have lost, but Mudavadi goes home knowing that if I were to go to Kibera today, I can arrange a political rally. The same happens to Jubilee. But going forward, what does that inform about our political space, the intolerance that we are seeing, and all these other things? There is something also that we need to ask ourselves when we are discussing where violence began and all these other issues. There was a rally in Woodley where Sifuna said, I was ordering so-and-so that Didymus Baraza and Khalwale should run from Sijui where to where within 1.59 of a minute. So that is where we need to begin and ask ourselves if indeed we want to investigate what happened in Kibra in terms of the violence. That is where we need to begin. Two, the other thing, democracy in itself allows for very many things. It also allows for people to complain. And what we must learn from the Kibra by-election, listen to the people who are on the ballot. The rest can say whatever they want to say, but who are on the ballot? Imran, Mariga, Okoth, the Ukweli party, all those ones. What are they saying? Because directly they are the people who are directly involved in the thing. It doesn't matter what Bichachi has said about those candidates being headed there by their parties. But at the end of the day, listen to them. it is them whose names and whose license we were using to fight or to bribe voters, if that is what happened there.
All right. As you respond, perhaps, Mark Bichachi, the politics of alliances. We've seen many established politicians actually decamp from the parties that sponsored them to the political seats they actually hold right now. I wouldn't mention names, but it was visible and it was quite substantial. What do you make of that in terms of the rules of political parties and alliances looking forward to 2022?
First, let me just go back a little bit and address the issue of the lingo that was used around this election. You know, it's funny now that the person who first said bedroom is complaining of the analogies that came after. If you say you are invading my bedroom, I must react. And that's the narrative you created. You cannot create a dangerous narrative, suffer the consequences of that narrative, and then not expect to carry the tag of that. And that is why the amount, in as much as we are saying that there was an increase and a jump in what Jubilee got, I would be very careful to quantify what that jump was. Was that jump because of the handshake? Was that jump because Jubilee spent more money in Kibra than it ever has? Is it that Jubilee did more rallies than it ever has? And the amount of money and time spent there, is that a good return on investment? If I was a Jubilee strategist, I would sit down and really consider, what does that mean? You also need to consider the very real reality that Boni Halwale has promised you that he'll bring you the Luya vote. Did he bring you the Luya vote? Is Didymus Baraza a Luya kingpin? So if I was in the think tank of McDonald Mariga and the Deputy President William Ruto, I would really consider whether these people are going to deliver for me the vote they purport to. Are they worth the envelope that they receive at the end of the month? Now, that said, you must then come into the issues of what has the handshake done and the apparent movement of political leaders in this country, starting from Mukambani and even Minor Commander here in Nairobi. Now, the question has to be asked, did they really defect, especially the Jubilee members? Or is Jubilee the only party in government and in opposition at the same time? Is Jubilee one? Is there Jubilee A, which was pro-Imran, and Jubilee B, which was anti-Imran? That's a question. Because if the Jubilee is together, then they're renegades. But if Jubilee is split into A and B, then they're playing their party politics par excellence, because that's how Jubilee has been. If you look at the handshake, the biggest attackers of the handshake are within Jubilee. The fight against corruption, on record. Look at the people who've insulted Kinoti, people who've insulted the DPP. They're all in Jubilee.
Interesting. A lot to talk about the just concluded Kibra by-election, and we'll definitely continue reading between the headlines right there. Let's take a short break right now on Inside